Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? So much for not being controversial, huh? How's that for an inflammatory video title? Well, I'm not really not going to be that inflammatory, I don't think. But what the heck? Maybe I figure an inflammatory title will give me a lot of views. Hooray! I'll be popular. So is everything really Dungeons and Dragons? No. But a lot of times when I talk about D&D, what I really mean is role-playing games, and to me they all boil down to being very similar at the end, more similar than they are different. I'll talk about that a little bit, give you my take, because it's my channel, and so I'm going to talk about what I like. So I'm going to differentiate these between or from storytelling games. So there's a lot to cover. So if it looks like I'm reading off notes, I am, because there's a lot of stuff, that I was thinking about, because I've been thinking about this topic for a long time. But first off, and this could even be kind of an introductory what the hell are role-playing games video, if you wanted it to be. I don't know if you want it to be. But first of all, as a player in a game, you're going to assume the role or a persona of a character, in a constructed reality or game world. Okay, we're all on the same page. Then you're going to explore and interact with all elements of that fictional reality through the perspective and the abilities of this player character. Now, that's how you experience the entire world. And how you're going to do that is like one person playing the game is going to be called a referee or game master, or in old parlance, dungeon master, and they're tasked with being the conduit through which the players experience the world through the senses of their character. And to some degree, these characters, and it varies by game and how what your tastes are, your character's defined to a degree by their abilities, their experience, their profession, and the amount of skill they have in various areas. Okay, still D&D, more or less, right? And at some point, there's a threshold around where a stated action or a circumstance, a threat, a conflict, or whatever requires a die roll or mechanic for resolution. And these can be triggered by player/character choices, or simply by external circumstances, saving throw. Now the resolution mechanics are used, they can be very global. One die roll. We're gonna do a percentage die roll. Look at those old dice. These dice are like 30 some odd years old. I love these things. 0 to 9 twice. Old diamond dice. So it's very global. One die roll, or it can be very granular. You can be multiple die rolls to determine the outcome of a conflict, some kind of event step by step. A classic example would be like a combat. And likewise, the resolution mechanic you use can be binary, like pass-fail, or it can involve a degree of success or a degree of failure. And to me, one of the classic ones we never think about is, the damage roll. Okay, you succeeded. You did a D20 roll, you hit the orc. Now roll damage, see how well you succeeded or failed. All right, all games really have these to one degree or another. And then, okay, modifiers or some kind of guide affecting the resolution mechanic arise from the stated attributes or defining attributes of the character, and then the circumstances of the situation, and perhaps, depending on the game and what you want, tactics. And then finally, like a method for representing improvement or mastery or experience is built into the game mechanic in some manner. So you level, you gain more skill points, something happens in that game. So what are the real differences between, straight up Dungeons and Dragons and other games? There's not as many differences as you would think, in my mind. And what are the differences? They can be very profound and impact your enjoyment of the game. But what are the differences? I came up with a few real fast. It's important to know what genre or setting or feel you're after, because different games emulate different ones. And then, another thing, what's important to you, what can distinguish one game from another, is what abilities or attributes of the characters should be linked to mechanics. What should be important and what shouldn't be important. We just don't really care about this stuff that much mechanically. What actions and situations should require a die roll or some kind of mechanic to determine the outcomes. That differentiates one game from another quite a bit. And then, finally, what mechanics should be used, and this is a subject near and dear to my heart, but there's a whole, bunch of choices you have to make, in terms of what you like in a game. Do you want a global roll or a granular one? Do you want one die roll to determine the outcome of a combat, or do you want like a whole bunch of things? A bunch of things. Do you want a unified mechanic versus a varied mechanics? You D20 system or like a whole bunch of stuff. Simple versus complex mechanics. How crunchy do you want it to get? Where's your sweet spot? Do you want a binary mechanic, pass fail, or do you want degree based? Do you want something that's a role that's simple, fast, or intuitive versus very precise? Because those can be very different. And there's a continuum where it gets very precise, but like it's no longer intuitive, no longer like and vice versa. It's so simple, it's not really doing it for you. Do you want mechanics that are like a complete simulation of everything, or an abstract representation? And that's a continuum. Where do you feel comfortable with a game that does that? And here's a really important one for me, probably the last one, but one of the most important is, do the mathematics and the probabilities of the outcomes of your mechanic yield satisfying results, or do they break verisimilitude and immersion for you? That's important to me. It may not be important to you. To me, at the end of the day, we could use different. I could be playing in a game where we're using different names for the attributes, or ability scores, whatever you want to call them, different numbers, entirely different mechanics, and the genre or the setting can be very different. But still, in my mind, in some place, there's a spot in my brain where I'm playing D&D. Okay, that's how it works for me. How it works for you may be different, but at some point that D&D switch goes on, and that's what I'm doing. How I approach it and how I approach other role-playing games, can be different. Can be very, could just be in the way that I really like. But at some point, that D&D switch gets triggered, and that's what I'm doing. It doesn't matter if I'm rolling a dice pool. It doesn't matter, what else is going on in terms of like, do I have 3 ability scores or 18, or am I using a skill-based system? Or am I using whatever? That doesn't matter to me as much as, am I getting immersed or involving it in a satisfying way with a game world, through the senses of my character. How does it work for you? Let me know.